Joining us now, proud hockey dad, just back from Germany, ESPN, NHL color analyst, and of course one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast here, part of the Go-Goat Sports Network, Mr. Raymond Ferraro. How you doing?
I'm tired. I'll tell you. That's no matter how many times you go across and do that flight, that first couple of days is, you're swimming upstream. That's for sure.
We've talked to you about watching Landon before, but Matt just said hockey dad, and I had a ball watching my son play and my daughters play last night. The first time ever in my career, by the way. All three played at the same time. But it never gets old because every time I talk to you about watching Landon, you beam still. And I can't imagine I'm having a ball watching my 17-year-old play U18. You still have a ball watching your kid play, don't you?
I love it. I was I hid out in the corner and watched a couple of practices, which of course the guys are like, "Oh, Landon, your dad's here." I'm gonna get into it, right? He's 31 years old, and he's like, "Yeah, I know my dad's here. He's over in the corner with the coffee." But I love it, and I'm gonna miss it whenever the time comes that he doesn't play anymore. And it's funny, you often think you understood what your parents did, but now I know why my dad liked coming to practice. And like when I was back home in Trail in the summer, and I'd be starting to skate, and we'd go and do conditioning skates. There'd be 5 of us on the ice, and he'd come, and he just liked to watch me on the ice, I guess. And we'd always go for chicken fried rice after. That was his big deal. So I'd always get a free meal after anyway.
There you go. Amazing.
It was good. But I see it. I see it for everybody that watches their kids play. It's like, it's just the best. I love it. I hope they can enjoy it.
Well, as I texted you, you sounded so joyful last week, right? It was amazing. And, are you telling me you prefer the hockey rink to the pouring, freezing cold rain of watching Riley out on the soccer pitch?
This is 100% true, Matt, is when the boys decided they were going to play soccer, one of the first things Cammie and I said was, no 6 a.m. practices. Isn't that great? Then we realized, short of a monsoon, and even in a monsoon, it's actually lightning is about the only thing. Well, snow, we're going to get probably the weekend off here, but you're out there. I realized, I had one of those teeny little personal umbrellas. I'm like, this is useless.
No,
I had to go back to my golf umbrella. This was not even close.
You were telling us the story. You were in the cab last night for a 0-0 hockey game. Yeah. Grabbed your bags, walked inside, suddenly was 3 buzz. What did you make of the Canucks and Panthers last night?
Reese was on the couch, and so he's 12, and I walk in, and he goes, it's 3-0. And I'm like, well, I when you hear something.
You have that wrong, kid.
Yeah, it doesn't quite work or whatever. And I was like, man, I was basically coming up the street, and it was 0-0. And I think it's kind of indicative of the way, that little snapshot of when the team gets rattled, things fall apart, and there's no back to ground zero until it's almost too late. And so they needed the break, they needed to start again. They were they got terribly outplayed, and then and I know the shots level out after, but a lot of that's the old score effect, and the game was gone by that time. And I guess what concerns me is that once the ball starts slipping down the hill, it really does pick up momentum. And by the time they can even get their hands on it, it's 3-1, it's 3-0, it's you're in a hole that you just can't get out of.
Bruce talked about that last night, that we're letting in this first goal, and we're trying to recover from that. And before you know it, we've let in a second goal. And then, so he concurred that they're unable to pick themselves up afterwards, which is odd for a lot of the guys that have kind of been through this a little bit. You'd think that you'd figure that out. As a pro golfer figures out how to leave behind the double bogey and go looking for a birdie.
But Blake, that's a great example, because we see really great, we love golf. And so we see really great players go into a mindset where a double bogey doesn't get erased. The double bogey becomes 6 over in 3 holes or 4 holes, and their tournament's over. And so that's what I see when I watch, is it just goes so fast. So there almost need, again, I'm coaching a team from my living room here, but it's like when the goal goes in there, that next line, whoever it is, there almost needs to be a thought or a strategy of, no matter what happens this shift, we don't get scored on. We don't need to get the goal back. we need to throw the speed trap up here, that nothing bad is going to happen on this shift, so you can at least get your feet underneath you a little bit and maybe, take a deep breath and not go, oh, here we go again. Because Bruce is right. Like, I've played on teams that give up goals in a hurry, and you sit down, like you come off the ice at 0-0. The next time you go back, it's 3-0. And you're like, man, I just slid down the bench 10 feet. I don't even know what the hell happened. And I'm sure that's what they all feel like.
At the time that we're recording this, full disclosure, we don't know the extent of Thatcher Demko's injury. What we do know is that what Rick Dollywall's reported, believe he's off for an MRI, and that the Canucks have recalled Colin Delia on an emergency basis. Do they have any chance of winning without Thatcher? Oh,
I don't know. I think he's such a critical piece of any success that they have. I know what his season's been like, and we all know that it's been disappointing by his standard and by the standard we've come to expect from him. So my answer is no. How are Spencer Martin and Colin Delia going to play at the level that you need to get to? We're not talking a 900 save percentage here. You're going to have to be better if the Canucks are going to long term be able to withstand this. And we'll see what the MRI, pops up. But guys don't go for an MRI, if there's no real particular reason. I wouldn't suspect the news is very great.
For some reason, too, I hate the injuries that come out of nothing. And he was in a bit of a scramble play, but there was an economy of movements there. It didn't seem to the naked eye like he was really extending in any way. He was down in that butterfly a little bit, made a couple of saves, and then froze. I think the goal might have gone in because he couldn't make another push off there to make that save. And I don't know, for some reason, my unscientific mind is just like, when something hurts that much and you haven't really even done anything, like, it's not a good sign to me.
Well, the only thing I can think of as you were going through that is, like, you see a receiver go across the middle of the field and just lie down.
Yeah. Like
they just stop. And and it's generally some kind of soft tissue structural thing. And it's just when you see a goalie kind of fold in half like that, as he did, it doesn't make you think that anything too good can be the result.
And it's not like the defense is there to ensure against all this stuff. More foibles last night for the likes of Stillman and even Schenn, who has had a marvelous season. Luke Schenn's done really, really well, and they've been amongst the top league pairings, in fact, in 5-on-5 play. But ultimately, Luke Schenn is still where he is in his career for a reason. And the more you lean on that player, right, it's bound to happen.
It is. Every player. I think we've talked about this with minutes played. With some of the forwards who play such heavy minutes, and even actually, I know we talked about it with Ekman Larsson, is that if you ask too much, it gets to the tipping point and it's diminishing return. And it's the same thing with Luke. There's zero not to like about Luke's season, about his character, about the way that he plays. However, if you're leaning on him heavy, there's going to be a point where he just can't play to the level that you need him to play at.
Blake, you got a Miller question, or you want to move on to Ring of Honour?
Well, it's sort of similar in terms of, we know the defensive prowess of JT Miller isn't necessarily there this season, but he's also been, and this has been kudos to him, one of his positives is that he generally tells it like it is. Does it matter in that room that JT's as critical about the team performance when he's often a big part of the foibles that lead to goals, and that continues throughout these last couple of games?
Well, I think it probably matters what it's like when the door's closed as opposed to, what it's like in public. And, he's a guy the type of guy that the media goes to, and they're not stupid. They know they're going to get a quote. You're going to get something. And so I figured out pretty quickly that there's a reason that the media comes to my stall, and it's because I got, for right or wrong, I had lots to say, and sometimes it got me in trouble and sometimes it didn't, but they kept coming there because they knew that I would be willing to speak about it. It's probably the same thing in a lot of ways with JT Miller. He's a prominent player on the team, and they're defensively, it's not gone very well. And
you also don't want him to sugarcoat it either, right?
No, so like
can't win.
When you think about it, if he says, I thought I was in the right place, and gee, I did the right thing, and like, what are you going to say? I mean, you're on the ice for a bunch of goals against, and so, but I always felt it mattered more what happened when it's just the guys in there than what it's like for out for the public or the media.
And just a reminder, you might be able to get away with saying, hey, our veterans played their veterans to a standstill. But if you say our young players played their young players pretty well, then
I love that.
You
story.
can say that if you're you can say that if you're one of the veterans. However, when you're one of the young guys,
right.
It's just it seemed to be a strategy error.
Yes. No, don't draw a straight line between young guys to young guys.
No.
It was a debate that raged for about 8 years, because that's how long it's been, gentlemen. You can believe it, since Roberto Luongo was traded back to Florida. And in years past, I know you have said, hey, Luongo, for me, retire his number. Mm-hmm. All that said, what did you make of Ring of Honor last night? What did you make of the way Roberto handled it here this week?
Well, I mean, he handled it like he's handled just about everything. Like he gives you what he's thinking without really, dropping a grenade on everything. I think I always find him to be really pretty straightforward, pretty honest, and as honest as he can be, and he's respectful of everything that's going on. I'll be honest with you, I don't quite get the separation between Ring of Honor and retired numbers. I mean, there's lots of teams that have really good players, and there are teams that have retired sweaters. Like, okay, I don't know. You guys have been in the Boston Garden, and they got about 12 numbers retired. I mean, if you want to wear a number under 10, you can't, because they're all retired. And so, but
does Toronto have it right then, where you just get honored? No numbers are retired?
In my opinion, yes. I think, without question, that's the best way to do it. Because I'll tell you, if I were in Toronto and I was wearing number 14 and Dave Keon's name is up at the top with number 14, I would feel great pride.
Right.
I really would. I think it would be amazing. And
so, you wouldn't feel guilty. You'd feel the pride of carrying on the work ethic and all that sort of stuff.
Of what that number means. I really do think that, teams aren't going to go back to that, and say, we're going to unretire all these numbers and just recognize them. But I like the way Toronto does it. I really do.
And of course, for years the Canadians drew a very hard line in terms of whose number was retired or whatnot.
Is Larry Robinson's number retired there yet? I don't think so.
I believe so.
I thought it was. Really? Okay. Yeah.
I think I thought either him or Serge Savard, for years, the number just was never worn. It wasn't retired. Right. It's just, you can't wear it. And so it made me think, wait a minute, are the trainers deciding whose number's retired? Or
well, for a long time, that was 11 in Vancouver, you remember, in honor of Wayne Mackey. Is that number one? Is that number one now? Like, there's two guys in the Ring of Honor that have worn one. Do you think the Canucks have effectively retired that number now, or do you think there'll be a goalie wearing number one sometime soon?
Jeez, I don't know. I mean, technically they could.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember
somebody could have worn 11, and that's a popular number. You can bet in those 30 years somebody wanted to wear 11.
That being different, though.
Right. Because of the circumstances.
Because of the circumstance. I mean, I remember Luongo's first interview here, or maybe it wasn't his first, but certainly among the very beginning, and they asked him why he wore number one, and he said, well, doesn't that say it all? And I always remember that. I'm like, man, that is awesome that he felt that way. Like I am a number one goalie. That's why I'm wearing number one. So what if in 6 years you've got a guy that comes in and he's number one and he wants to wear number one? Well, it's not retired. Yeah. See, I think that's a cool thing. I think that's a good thing. I like that way better. And I would like the banners to reflect that these are recognized numbers for achievement.
Yeah. Larry Robinson in 2007.
Robinson is retired 19, and for years it was 7 numbers in Montreal: 1 Plante, 2 Harvey, 4 Beliveau, 7 Morenz, 9 Rocket, 10 Lafleur, and 16 Pocket Rocket, and they've now doubled it, guys.
Really?
And they've reached way back for guys like Butch Bouchard and Boom Boom Geoffrion and Dickie Moore and Yvonne Cornway, all the way up to Patrick Waugh.
So when you go,
they're at 14.
But, okay, so, Matt, it's almost like when the Hall of Fame inducts somebody 40 years after they retired.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, they must have had a hell of a career in the old timers game. Like, what changed? Either you're in or you're out. The number's retired or it's not. To me, there should be no debate on any of this stuff. Like, it is or it isn't. Like, and if you're in the gray area, then it's probably not.
I get
that's
it
how
sometimes.
I felt about it.
Yeah, I get it sometimes when there's a limited number in a certain Hall of Fame class that suddenly, okay, this isn't a particular great first-year class, and so that sort of allows you to reach back and honor someone. But I hear you with regards to, nothing obviously changes after they retire. In the case of the Habs, I think they just got tired of hearing people say, why is Ken Dryden not retired? Like, why is Boom Boom not retired?
That
and
stuff
of course,
was
they
ridiculous.
They knew the elephant in the room was coming with Patrick Waugh, right? They knew that eventually they had to make amends with St. Patrick there. So, so for everyone who says the Canucks have too many retired numbers, and we realize the Bruins and the Canadians have
a few cup differences,
a much longer history and much more Stanley Cups, but St. Louis has a number of retired players before they won a Stanley Cup.
I remember when we got to Hartford, and one of my favorite numbers was 19. And I thought I would wear 19, and then I get to training camp, and I'm like, why the hell is that number hanging at the roof there? I'm like, oh, Johnny McKenzie from the WM. Like, Pie McKenzie had his number retired? But I don't know. I guess at the time it was a thing. And
you want to have a party. You're an organization. You want to have a party. You're like,
sure.
Can we have a party for something? And I'm like, let's retire Pie McKenzie.
Rick Lee's number was retired.
Yes. Wow.
So Rick Lee and Pie McKenzie's number 2 and number 19 were hanging there forever, and you're like, interesting. And then they retired Gordie Howe's number, but who the hell was going to wear number 9 anyway?
Right. I was just going to ask. I was going to say, you tell me you didn't go to 9, Ray. Tell me you didn't ask about 9.
Hey, I see nobody's wearing 9. Could I wear that?
Okay, last question here. So, look, as we just talked about, there's no statute here. You can reach back if you want and honor a player like a Tony Tanney, who was the all-time Vancouver Canucks leading goal scorer, who has not been honored either retired number or Ring of Honor. As Blake points out, Jyrki Lumme and Matthias Ohlund, there is not a ton that separates the two of them. Todd Bertuzzi is looking pretty good, given the passage of history, his numbers with the Vancouver Canucks. And then there's Edler, who's still playing, and Kessler, who's sort of the one guy from the 2011 team. Who do you think is next for the Vancouver? If any of those guys, maybe it's a guy on the current team, maybe it's a guy we don't even know yet, Ray. What do you think in terms of the next guy to be honored, Ring of Honor? And I think we're talking Ring of Honor here.
Yeah, yes. I would say none of those jump out and, anywhere past that for me. But before you get, I think Kessler's should be recognized at some point. I do think, if you're doing this, 2 things. One is, got to be careful here. You got to think this out, because pretty soon there's only so much room in the ring, and then where are you going to put everybody? You might
shrink
have to
the font.
Yeah.
This is where free agent.
You might have to think that through. The second part is I'd prefer to dive back a little bit and kind of bring everything up to speed before you move forward. And moving forward would be Kessler to me. Of the newer players. So it's hard, and it gets harder and harder to understand the significance of Tony Tanti when we're this many years past his big contribution, or years of contribution, where he was among the best scorers in the league. And so Tanti's the name that jumped to me. I think Jyrki should be in there just because I'd like to hear his speech. I think it would be really funny. But Tanti would be the one for me first.
Here's an idea that saves you the time and space. Like right now, it's on like weird board, and it's like styrofoam numbers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Make that all a screen, a wraparound screen. They've got those in a lot of the modern things now, and then you can adjust the font as you need to, and have them fade in and out. So you can have 50 guys on there, and then every period they're just kind of fading in and out, and all it'll be left is like 61 and 48 to where is.
Well, look at honestly. I mean, we used to laugh at guys that wore high numbers, right? That was a training camp number. Now 57, 64, 78. Who cares? It's just like you just get it. I don't mind the wraparound electronic LED boards. That's not
right.
That's
not my money.
I don't think it'll ever happen, but it's a hell of an idea. And or you could just make it smaller, or put a big banner up at one end of the arena like they do in Boston.
Okay, they're going to hire you to do cutting the styrofoam numbers out to make the smaller ones when they need that.
Those with kids know you've done a lot of cutting in your day, or paper mache and all that sort of stuff.
Just wrapping this out, I mentioned this earlier in the week when we were talking jersey numbers, that I want to say it was like the 10,000th goal in Montreal Canadiens history or whatnot, something 20 years ago early in my career that was a milestone, and the goal was something like 97 from 95 and 93. And I was told that there was some chafing in the head offices of the Habs that was the milestone goal. Those were the sweater numbers of the three forwards involved.
Well, the front office of the Habs, they should have realized there's a reason those guys were wearing those numbers. It's because they can't wear any of the other ones.
Exactly.
Well, Harvey Smeal
retired 14 of them, for heaven's sake.
Harvey Smeal in the BCHL, to his retirement day, I believe, it was like old school. It was like an Olympic team. Like nobody above 30. Everybody was 30.
1 to 30.
Yeah. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff, Ray. Have a good weekend. We'll catch up next Friday.
You betcha. Have a good week, guys.